Okay, so water resources update, and I have groundwater update up here. This is the presentation I gave to our board last month's board meeting, so I apologize. There's going to be a little bit of repeat, but this is a much quicker version of it. And I think they'll appreciate that too. Groundwater update is really simple this year. And people call and they ask if most of the questions I get is, what's the groundwater doing? And I always say, well, where are you at? What's going on? That type of thing. This year is pretty much the same answer for everybody. Groundwater is pretty stable. We're up just a little bit from last spring. Pretty easy to talk about. I'll give you a couple of examples anyway of what we're talking about when I say that. In Phelps County, this well is just south of Loomis. I guess first I should tell you, this is a hydrograph. On our vertical axis over there, we have elevation above sea level. It's in 2-foot increments. Across the bottom of our graph, that's just timeline, obviously. All these wells are irrigation wells. We started measuring back in the late 70s, 1977 when most of these started. So for example, in this one, like I said, 2 miles south of Loomis. As we go through time here, you can see kind of a gradual increase, and this is a mound influence well. I'm not going to really talk about the mound today, but just recognize it's mound influence. When we get to the late 80s, we have just a little dip, stability there where it just flattens out. And then about the 1990s, early 93, I think it was, you can see that we had a really big increase right there. I'm sure a lot of you remember how wet it was. Continue up until about 2000, we hit a peak and then we go into a drought with a little U-shape there, and then 2012 hit again with another drought. And you can see clear over here on the far right side, that is our most recent spring, which is our highest point up there, and our fall, which was only down about a foot from the spring, as our highest fall reading in at that well. So I anticipate we're probably going to see our highest spring reading coming up here in just a couple of months. So that's Phelps County. We'll go over to Gospel County. And G37 is about 8 miles southwest of Bertrand, about 10 miles north of Edison. And you kind of see the same pattern. It's not quite as significant of an increase. But you see 1993 is very well highlighted. We have the 2 dips for the last couple droughts. And of course, where we're at currently, we're still seeing some pretty good numbers. Look at that a different way though, just a few miles south is another well that's right on the Furnace County line. But we kind of see the same pattern repeated even though we have a decline here. And for those of you that farm in the Republican Basin, you probably recognize that the geology changes quite a bit, and that's kind of what this one is experiencing too. We just don't see any mound influence here. But in the late 80s, early 90s, we had some decline. 93, we had the bump again. Went into the 2000 drought. We didn't really recover from that. And when 2012 hit, we declined some more, but we've been pretty much stable for about the last 10 years with that well. Okay, so Kearney County. This well is right outside of Minden. And same pattern again, you can see the 93 bump up to 2000. We have our declines currently over here on the right side, obviously. What it appears is going on is there was, from all the other wells that we measure also, the mound has actually kind of retreated from the Minden area. And so around 2000 when that drought hit, seems to be kind of when that began. And it just hasn't really recharged that area since then. There's still some influence, just not nearly as much. Again, I'm going to shift gears and talk more of rainfall now. And this graph is incredibly busy, and I'm not really going to talk about the whole thing, but this is all of Minden rainfall since 1893. The number one thing I see when I look at it is our 93. 1993, I should say. And this is summer rainfall only. So we're talking June, July, August, okay? which is obviously during the growing season, pumping season, that type of thing. 28 inches at Minden. And so, that seems pretty significant, but it's more the problem of when we don't have those rainfall events. So for example, 19 and 15, very dry years. In fact, 2 of the driest years recorded. 29 was dry, but according to the records, there was some missing data. So hard to really know exactly what happened that year. I'm going to zoom in though and just look at 1977 to present day. So since 1977, Minden has averaged about 10.5 inches of rain per summer, June, July, August. 2021, 8.24 inches, which is a little bit down. Not too bad, but better than some of the years previously. This got me thinking, seeing the last couple of years when we were declining, and I thought, well, how much rain since 1977? 10.5. Since 1981, it was 10.5. And I thought, well, what if we averaged since the 90s? So 30 years ago. Well, we have 10.64 inches. That's including that 93 rainfall. So I thought, well, heck, what about the last 20 years? Well, in the last 20 years, we're down to about 9.6 inches of rainfall for those 3 months. So, okay, that's kind of concerning. Well, we've still got 2 significant years where we didn't have any rainfall. What does that look like? 9.22, 9.25 inches of rainfall over 3 months during the growing season and pumping season. So not only do we see that mound retreat from the Minden area, but we're also not seeing the rainfall to help recharge it. So that kind of sounds a little bit like, oh, here comes the global warming talk, right? Well, that's not what I'm here to talk about. Of course, I'm not Chicken Little either. The sky is not falling. That seems pretty concerning, doesn't it? I got to thinking, well, let's look at Holdridge then. Let's try to find some reoccurring scenarios. So, of course, average summer rainfall in Holdridge, 11.25. Last summer, we actually had more rainfall than usual in that case. But kind of the same pattern, we have a little bit of a decline, not nearly as much though. And in fact, in the last decade, we actually increased just a little bit. Still a little bit down, but not as bad. So how about Gosper County then? Well, when we look at our average summer rainfall there, it's only about 10 inches, which makes sense. We're moving west. Summer of 2021, only about 8.25 inches fell there. But our averages since then aren't bad either. In fact, they're a little bit more stable than the other 2. And staying right around that 10 inches up until the last decade, we're down about 9.5. Only about a 0.5 inch decline over that time frame. I thought that was kind of interesting. My final slide, I just wanted to kind of share a report that came out with the Weather Service here a couple of weeks ago, actually. And they're showing you basically the coldest low temperature day of each year. And if you remember February when it was so darn cold, it gives a good indication that February is actually moving to be our coldest year, or our coldest month of each year. When they released this information, this is the 1991 to 2020 average. And with the report, it said there will be about a week difference from the 1981 to 2010 average. It actually moved later into the year. So, for example, it's hard to see it here with this projection, but kind of where we're at in Holdridge right now, January 11th to the 15th, it's kind of the coldest time frame that we would usually see on average. But before that, it was actually about January 6th through the 10th. So it actually moved about a week later into the year. So hopefully that's not a bad omen for what's to come in the next couple weeks here. But that's just something interesting I saw the other day. I thought it would be interesting to share with all of you. Final slide. So with that, I would be terrified to take any questions.
Do you think the management, like on the now system, that changed any, that maybe that could be affecting the town?
So the question is the management of the canal system affecting some of the mound? In the Minden area particularly,
So
or anywhere, well, to a certain degree, certainly. You want to be more efficient with water, there's no doubt about that. And by lining canals and being more efficient to deliver that water, you have less, a loss of water at the surface anyway. The danger comes from in our groundwater recharge that we rely on, especially with the mound, is if we lose that recharge, how do we manage it? Really. And so, yeah, there is certainly some issues to be solved there over time. Obviously, with the mound, you saw with the hydrographs have gone up as much as 20, 30 feet, just in some of these areas, more than that in others. But over time, it certainly could decline without proper management.
I know in our area, there's a conference now, and they've been putting water in the canal a lot earlier. Some of us more close now are having seepage problems where we're having certain areas drowned out.
Mm-hmm.
That being island, the water table come out so much, but I think it helps keep the river.
Right, yeah, and I mean that's you're talking to a group that's experienced many of those problems as well, and that's one of the management issues. In some areas have too much water, and others don't have enough. So that's one of the challenges of water management, certainly. Anything else? Yeah. So the question was, have we seen any other climatic shifts, especially with rainfall? And that basically was the question. And yeah, that was one of the things I hope you caught there. I was just talking about summer rainfall, June, July, August, which obviously is very important for crop growing and when we're utilizing our irrigation system. At the same time, there is a little bit of a shift in rainfall. If you've noticed, our fall seems to be a little bit drier, especially recently. I'm no weather expert, I will tell you that, but I like to read a lot of research and that type of thing. We're not seeing a lot of decline in our average rainfall through the year, but at the same time, we're not seeing it when we need it necessarily. And so, especially this year, the thing that concerns me this year, we haven't had any snow or rainfall in this area, especially, for months now. And so that's not really recharging what we need. So at the same time, when spring comes around, I expect to bump in our recharge. But if we don't have that recharge here soon, there's a good chance it won't be nearly as significant. So, as far as shifting rainfall and things like that, yes, it's happening. How much so, I don't know. Yeah, so the question was about at other decades and more historical data. And the answer you bluntly, yes. But this is literally like last week that I looked at this. And so I kind of just wanted to compare our irrigation season with our, since the 70s, just to kind of compare the two.
All right, what I was wondering back, the reason I say that is because our other decades, this average less than 8 inches. My question, are at the same level. I would say, is this a pattern or is this something, when you say, well, it's happened in the past, we don't know, but at least we know that that was my.
Right, yeah, and so that's a good point to make, is that, just because it's happening now doesn't mean that it hasn't happened in the past, and I totally agree with that, and some of the averages that I put together showed that we've actually had drier periods, it's come back, and, that's my anticipation, we're probably gonna see a little bit of a increase over time again, at least I hope so. Whether or not that happens is yet to be seen, obviously, but like in the 20s and 30s, they always talk about the droughts, those types of things. Significant decline into similar to what we're seeing now. Obviously, they didn't have nearly the technology and the equipment to deal with it. So yeah, hopefully it's more of a cyclical thing and not a one-way street. Yeah.
So when you're collecting this data, that's collected from more reporting stations now than what it used to be?
So the Minden station is at the airport, and as far as I know, it's been there as long as the airport has been there.
So they only use that reporting station.
That's-
There aren't any other areas.
That's the official station for the weather service, and so is the one here in Holden. The Gosper one, I believe, has changed a little bit over the years, but generally it's been kind of in the middle of Gosper County, or at least towards the Elko area. But yeah, those are the official observation locations for the weather service.